Hey, what's going on, fam? So, another quick video. I just want to talk about these protests that are going on around the nation. As you guys know, obviously, since the George Floyd murder, people have, especially in Minneapolis, but since it's spread to other cities around the nation, people are. It started out as protests, which are usually not effective for black people because all we do is get out there and we chant and we march and sing and cry about no justice, no peace, and you know, do a bunch of emotional, symbolic nothing burgers that are meant to do nothing but expend and misdirect black energy against racism, white supremacy. But and even though many of these protests started out that way, many of them have become riots, which also has happened in the past. But when you're rioting and destroying property, it's actually a more effective protest than symbolic nothing burgers. First of all, because symbolic nothing burgers have no effect and are actually detrimental to black people because, like I said, all they do is expend and misdirect black energy. Um, Riots, even though they aren't the 100% most effective, because obviously even after riots, white supremacy still continues, they are a lot more effective than a nothing burger protest because, like I said, not only because nothing burger protests and symbolic um, emotional chants have absolutely no effect, and as a matter of fact, they're detrimental. Not only that, but because of the fact that riots actually cause inconvenience and disruption to the system. And that's what you have to cause because, yes, riots are uncomfortable. Yes, they're scary. Yes, all that other stuff. But so is getting murdered. Getting murdered because you're black is scary. Getting murdered because you're black is uncomfortable. Getting murdered because you're black is inconvenient. So, um, and also people say, oh, they're breaking the law. Well, getting murdered because you're black is technically against the law. Obviously, we know under white supremacy, the law doesn't matter. It's only the law only matters when it's convenient to a white supremacist. But in general, that's against the law. In a just society, that's against the law. In the society that America pretends to be, that's against the law. So I don't want every excuse you can make about a riot or why we should not riot. It's all those things apply to anti-black racism and white supremacy. It's uncomfortable. It's inconvenient. It's scary. It's amoral. It's illegal. So now that people have started to protest and riot, which actually damages and harms white supremacy or at least inconveniences it, these white supremacists are out here talking about you're not helping your case. We've seen nonviolent protests be very effective. As a matter of fact, I saw Crystal Ball on that show Rising. And now, as some of you may remember, I actually recommended people to watch that show. Not for, again, I made it clear even in that video, not for a black agenda, but just for the truth about Democrats. But just because I refer somebody to a white media outlet for the truth about Democrats doesn't mean that I'm endorsing everything that they say or saying that black people should take everything that they say and take their advice and follow their political advice. That's why I made it clear, do not go to these people for a black agenda. Only go to these people just to see how corrupt Democrats are in general and how corrupt they are even towards white society. However, um, there's a reason why I gave that warning and that distinction because I saw Crystal Ball on Rising say, oh, we've seen nonviolent protests be very effective. And that's a white supremacist talking point. I'm sorry, but it is. And again, this is why people like me say don't vote, because all sides of the political spectrum, right-wing, conservative, Republican, libertarian, mainstream Democrat, mainstream Republican, progressive, left-winger, socialist, like I said, don't matter what area of the political spectrum you come from, they all agree on white supremacy. If they didn't, they would support things like reparations and the black agenda. That is the only thing that shows you that a particular political party or movement or organization, it does not have an anti-black racist agenda, as if they have a true, not a token trick bag black agenda like the mainstream Democrats offer, but a real black agenda, not a all people of color. This is going to benefit everybody, and it's going to benefit black people the most because they're disproportionately affected. No, if a party or movement does not have a black agenda and black politics and supports reparations, they are most likely, if not definitely, an anti-black white supremacist political movement. And it's shown because people say shit like, oh, we've seen nonviolent protests be very effective, like Crystal Ball. And that's a lie. If we've seen nonviolent protests be very effective, then this shit wouldn't keep happening. That's a racist talking point. All of this, you guys aren't helping your case. Nothing helps our case. You know what doesn't help our case? Being black. That's what doesn't help our case. Because when Colin Kaepernick peacefully kneeled, y'all took away his job and silenced him. Y'all got him out the paint real fast, and everybody continues like that never happened. These white supremacists promote quote-unquote nonviolent protests because that doesn't move the needle. That doesn't affect anything. That's why they prop up Martin Luther King now, even though they hated him when he was alive. Back in the day, people like Malcolm X used to call Martin Luther King a Sambo. And they had good reason. Now, yes, Malcolm X came back and apologized, but Malcolm X started to get kind of influenced himself when he went to Mecca and saw white Muslims. He started kind of becoming more like Martin, and that was not a good thing. But Martin, as he started to die, he started to become more like Malcolm and started to demand tangibles and real change. And that's when they killed him. That's why these same white supremacists who love to prop up Martin Luther King and tell you what would Martin Luther King do as a way to get you to calm down, that's supposed to be some kind of weapon or magic words to make black people stop fighting white supremacy. What did Martin Luther King say about riots? It's the language of the unheard. It's what happened, and I'm kind of paraphrasing. I'm basically, so these aren't exact quotes. But he basically said, this is what happens when you leave people with no other option. They feel like they have no other choice but to go down and riot and burn down the community. And this is why. Because we don't have any other option. Black people have no other choice but to make the cost of murder too high. We've already tried peaceful protests. We've already done everything you wanted, and you get us out the paint when we do that. When Colin Kaepernick was making us think about this, it's about the military, it's about the military, it's about the flag. But now all of a sudden, now that we are doing something else other than peaceful protests, oh, why won't you guys peaceful protest? This doesn't help your case. But when Colin Kaepernick was peacefully protesting, that wasn't helping his case either. So it turns out the only thing, the thing that's not helping your case is being black. And black people, the fact that you're rioting and out here burning down cities, it's good. The cost of racism and white supremacy needs to be too high for it to be worth it. It should cost these white supremacists billions of dollars every time they kill a black person. Cities should burn across America every time one of these things happen until it stops. So black people, please, and that includes other black people who are telling you, yeah, stop the prejudice and the rise. These are black people who are either Sambos and agents of white supremacy, or they're just scared Sambos. And in that sense, even if they are just scared Sambos, they're still unintentionally being agents of white supremacy by the fact that they're being scared and being Sambos and letting that influence their thinking. They're still conducting the same function of a paid agent of white supremacy, of these celebrities and politicians that are out here saying this, oh, you guys need to stop protesting, you need to stop burning down your own community. First of all, and let me debunk that own community talk. First of all, none of this is our own. We don't own these AutoZones or these Walmarts or these Targets. We don't own none of this. And if there is one or two black businesses in the neighborhood and it's actually a black city, black people know that those businesses are black owned and won't touch them. But we don't own none of this, and that's not a coincidence either. That's part of the bigger symptom of society and white supremacy is the fact that black people don't own anything in their communities. So no, nobody's burning down their own community. Nobody's burning down their own house or apartment. They're burning down things that don't belong to them, that belong to the power structures of society that lock people out, that lock black people out, and are representative of the structures that lock black people out. That's why we don't own none of these businesses. So that's another faulty white supremacist lie. You guys are destroying your own community. And they're coming out with the distraction of we need to redirect our energy into voting. Fam, there's a reason why they tell us this stuff. There's a reason why they tell us to peacefully protest, because that helps them. There's a reason why they're telling us to vote instead, because that helps them. Remember when people are promoting strategies to you that involve going to the polls and voting suicide down ballot for people. Remember the fact that that celebrities and boule politicians and people who are known agents of white supremacy are giving you the same exact advice. And think about the correlation. Both people are telling you to vote and how important it is to stay engaged in the process. The same people who are telling you that you should not be peacefully, that you should only be peacefully protesting. People who have anti-black interests are the people who tell you this. So remember that when people are giving you advice that lines up exactly with the people who have anti-black interests. Fam, I don't want this to be a longer video, and I'm almost done, but I just want to wrap it up by saying, look, black people do not fall for these con games, these white supremacist talking points. They're tired, they're recycled, they're used over and over and over and over again. And we see by the evidence that the things they're telling you to do are not good enough, because if they were good enough, they would have already worked, because we've tried them over and over and over again. They would have already worked, and we wouldn't be having a George Floyd right now. We wouldn't be having an Ahmaud Arbery right now if all of these strategies that they tell you are so effective actually work. If going out and voting for suicide down ballot Democrats was effective, or national Democrats. If peacefully protesting was effective, none of this would be happening. And keep in mind, by the way, these are Democratic, down ballot Democrats. Remember, down ballot is local politicians and senators and congressmen. It was a down ballot prosecutor that did not bring the charges for 3 days. It was a down ballot prosecutor who has now brought charges, but they are low ball charges meant to get him off. Third degree murder is a law that only exists in 3 states. That's how weak of a charge it is. Most states won't even charge you with third degree murder, because if they're going to charge you with that, they might as well charge you with manslaughter. There's no point in having a third degree law. That's why only 3 states have it. So they're already setting the stage to give him a minimal sentence, which is what they always do. If they don't let him off totally, they give him a minimal sentence. This is old and recycled. And these are down ballot Democrats setting him up to get off. Yet you're supposed to go out and vote for down ballot Democrats. And again, fam, I know I keep mentioning that, but things like this is why examples like the down ballot Democrats in Minneapolis doing what they're doing is exactly why I have such a problem with the suicide down ballot strategy, and exactly why I keep mentioning it and bringing it up, because it's so dangerous to black society. Because that's what happened. That the DAs in Minneapolis is what happens when you vote for black people. Democrats blindly, because they're better, so-called better than the Republicans. Minimal to no charges happen, or like I gave an example in my last video, Darren Wilson, no charges happened, and that was another Democratic prosecutor. So fam, stop falling for these talking points, or don't fall for these talking points if you're not. Peaceful protests don't work, because if they did, they would have worked already. Voting doesn't work, at least not the way we have already been doing it. Voting with the idea that Democrats are better than the Republicans does not work, because we already been doing that, and this stuff is still happening. And any white person you see promoting these talking points, there's a 99.5% chance that they're a white supremacist. If they're not white, if they're a non-black person like an Indian or Asian, 99.9% that they're a wannabe white supremacist, anti-black racist. And if they're black, they're either A, just a scared coon, or B, they're a paid agent of white supremacy. And if they're a celebrity, most likely they're just a paid agent of white supremacy or a politician. But if they're just some average Joe on the street, they're just probably a coon. So anyway, fam, like I said, I didn't want this video to be too long. It's kind of already longer than I wanted it to be. So anyway, that's another video. Like, share, subscribe, and peace.